Have you ever looked at a woman and felt like she was above you? Not just in status, but in some intangible way. Like she was the prize, and you were lucky just to orbit her world. You put her on a pedestal. You watched your words, adjusted your energy, tried to be more her type. And when she smiled at you, it felt like sunlight. But when she turned cold, it felt like death. What if I told you this wasn't love? What if this was something ancient, predictable, and deeply one-sided? Plato understood this long before Instagram dating apps or modern heartbreak. He believed that desire is not equal and never has been. In his dialogues, The Symposium, he said that love begins not as connection, but as ascent. The man sees beauty in a woman and begins to climb, chasing, adoring, idealizing. But here's the twist. What he loves is not her. It's the form of beauty she represents. He doesn't want her. He wants the feeling of transcendence she awakens in him. Now fast forward to today. Modern men are still doing this. They meet a beautiful woman and instantly imagine a life with her. They see a goddess. They feel seen, validated, chosen. But the woman, she's not seeing divinity in return. She's assessing, filtering, evaluating. Plato would say that what most men call love is actually worship. And worship is not mutual. It's hierarchical. That's why she never felt the same. Not because you weren't good enough, but because in your eyes, she was never equal. She was higher, brighter, more. And no woman truly loves the man who worships her. She loves the one she can't quite capture. In this video, we're going to break Plato's brutal truth wide open and show you why your suffering in love isn't weakness. It's the result of a one-way spiritual pursuit, and it's time you stopped climbing. Plato didn't believe love was about two equals, meeting in the middle. He believed it was a vertical pursuit, a ladder. And once you understand how that ladder works, everything about your past relationships will make terrifying sense. In The Symposium, Plato describes the ladder of love as a spiritual journey. At the bottom is physical attraction, raw desire. A man sees a beautiful body, and he's magnetized. But as he climbs, his desire shifts from one body to all beautiful bodies, to beautiful minds, to ideas, and finally, to the form of beauty itself. Something divine, eternal, untouchable. This sounds poetic, but it hides a brutal truth. The one who climbs the ladder is almost always the man. Because men don't just desire a woman's beauty, they elevate it. They see her as a symbol, a muse, a gateway to meaning. She becomes more than a person. She becomes a reason. That's why you didn't just like her smile. You thought it meant something. That's why her presence didn't just excite you. It transformed you. You projected your unlived potential onto her. And in doing so, you placed her above you. Now, here's what Plato would warn you. The higher you place her, the further you fall when she doesn't catch you. Because modern women, unlike the poetic muse of ancient philosophy, aren't climbing that ladder with you. They're not spiritualizing your body. They're not projecting meaning onto your potential. They're not chasing your divine form. They're choosing from options. They're filtering strength. They're reacting to how you make them feel, not what you symbolize. And when a man brings all this romantic weight into a modern dating dynamic, it collapses. You fall in love with her essence. She assesses your status. You feel chemistry. She scans for leverage. You imagine depth. She responds to frame. This isn't bitterness. It's reality, and Plato saw it before Tinder ever existed. Desire is hierarchical. It's not equal love. It's one person pulling upward, the other deciding whether to accept, deny, or test. That pull, and the man who climbs too eagerly, he becomes the emotional supplicant. He confuses his obsession with nobility. He thinks, if I love her purely enough, deeply enough, sacrificially enough, she'll see it. But what she sees is a man who has already placed her above him. And no woman falls in love with her subject. She falls in love with her equal or superior, someone she can admire, not someone who mirrors her beauty back to her like a worshiper at an altar. That's why she loses interest when you start texting too much. That's why she turns cold after the third date, right when you thought it was going somewhere. That's why she said, "You're so sweet," before disappearing. It's not because she's cruel. It's because you climbed the ladder of desire with her image in your heart and forgot to stand beside her as a man. There's something no one tells men about polarity. It's not just about who's masculine and who's feminine. It's about mystery. It's about tension. It's about the charge that exists when two people don't collapse into each other, but orbit with mutual gravity. And nothing kills that charge faster than worship, when you adore her too much, when you treat her like a goddess, when you constantly affirm, chase, explain, and elevate. You think you're deepening the connection, but in her nervous system, you're flattening it. Plato might have called it the tragedy of the ideal. You've mistaken your desire for growth as an invitation to give yourself away. You see her as your mirror, your muse, your higher path. But she doesn't want to be worshipped. She wants to feel something, and feeling requires contrast, polarity, edges. When you dissolve into softness, when you become the understanding man who's always there, never a threat, never a mystery. She stops feeling you altogether. Attraction isn't built through endless support. It's built through containment. She wants to feel your calm in her chaos, your boundary in her storm, your stillness in her wave. But when she tests you and you fold, when she withdraws and you panic, when she disrespects you and you try harder, she doesn't feel safe. She feels superior, and a woman cannot desire the man she feels above. Plato believed that Eros real. Eros only thrives when there's a reverence for beauty, not submission to it. You're meant to be inspired by her, not enslaved. Yet most modern men have been trained by movies, songs, and social media to do exactly that. Treat her like a queen. Show her you care. Prove you're different. Different from what? From strength, from sovereignty, from presence. Let me tell you something brutal. She doesn't want to be the center of your universe. She wants to feel the gravity of a man who already has one. Because the more emotionally available you become, without edge, the more invisible you become. You're no longer a man to be admired. You're just the therapist, the shoulder, the sponge. She vents. You listen. She cries. You absorb. She pulls away. You chase. And all the while, your polarity collapses. She doesn't feel your fire. She feels your need. A need never leads to respect. This is the curse of the empathic modern man. He thinks he's building intimacy through exposure, but what he's actually doing is destroying mystery. The very thing that creates attraction in the first place. When a woman looks into your eyes, she doesn't want to see her reflection. She wants to see a force she can't fully explain, a presence she can't completely predict. That's polarity, and you don't get it by worshiping her. You get it by knowing who you are, with or without her. Plato didn't say, lose yourself in beauty. He said, ascend through it. But most men stop at the first step. They see beauty, and they give themselves away. You thought she loved you. You thought the late-night conversations, the emotional confessions, the moments of vulnerability meant something. You thought the way she looked at you when no one else was watching meant she saw you. But here's the hard truth Plato warned us about. She didn't fall in love with you. She fell in love with what you reflected in the Republic. Plato explained a core idea. We don't see reality. We see shadows of reality, projections, reflections, hints of truth, distorted by perception. And in love, this distortion is even worse. Modern relationships aren't built on seeing each other clearly. They're built on projection. You see in her everything you long for: beauty, grace, inspiration. And she sees in you not your soul, not your essence, but her own needs, traumas, hopes, and illusions we'd mirrored back. Here's what that looks like in real life. She meets you when she's broken, and you reflect safety. She clings to you, not because of who you are, but because of what you symbolize: escape, protection, healing. But once the storm inside her quiets, she no longer needs the mirror. She detaches, and you're left confused, bleeding, wondering why all that emotional intimacy vanished overnight. Plato would say it wasn't intimacy. It was projection. She saw a form, not a man, a temporary ideal, not a permanent truth. This is the agony of the empathic man. He thinks his depth creates love. He believes if he's honest enough, present enough, tender enough, she'll see his soul and stay. But women don't fall in love with your soul until they feel your frame. They don't want to explore your inner world until they trust your outer structure. They want to be held not just emotionally, but energetically. And here's where most men fail. They try to earn her heart by giving away their spine. You become a mirror for her confusion instead of a reflection of her admiration. You take on her pain. You mold to her moods. You try to be everything so she'll never leave. But the more you reflect, the more she forgets your identity, forgets your edge, forgets why she ever felt drawn to you in the first place. Because a man who reflects everything stands for nothing. Plato would say this man is stuck in the cave, chained to illusions, watching shadows on the wall and calling them truth. That's what you become when your whole identity is built around being emotionally available, endlessly supportive, and always agreeable. She doesn't love that man. She uses him not because she's evil, but because deep down, she senses you don't know who you are without her. And a man who doesn't know who he is cannot be loved, only consumed. So if you feel like she loved you until she didn't, ask yourself, did she ever really know you? Or did you become whatever she needed in the moment, hoping that would be enough? Because if she only loved the mirror you became, she was never looking for you to begin with. There's a moment every man must face, a moment when he feels the ache to reach out, to text her back, to explain, to chase just one more time, because maybe she didn't understand, or maybe she still feels something. But let me ask you, what if walking away is the only way she'll ever respect you? Plato believed that power begins with self-mastery. To rule others, you must first rule yourself, and in love. That means mastering the urge to give. When giving is costing you your soul, you think staying proves your strength. You think understanding her chaos shows your depth. You think enduring her silence, her coldness, her moods proves your love. But Plato would ask, If you cannot withhold yourself, are you really choosing anything at all? Let's get brutally honest. Every time you chase her validation, you reinforce her position above you. She becomes the decider, the judge, the goddess on the throne, and you become the servant, the one who waits, the one who explains himself after every shift in her mood, as if her emotions are law, and your job is compliance. But here's the paradox. The less you give, the more she feels. Not because you're playing games, but because your detachment forces her to confront her own emptiness. When you walk away, you do something terrifying to her ego. You become unreachable, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And in that moment, everything shifts, because most men don't leave. They linger, they hover, they beg with silence. They die slowly in her orbit, hoping she notices. But the man who leaves completely, who reclaims his energy, who doesn't punish, doesn't explain, doesn't flinch. That man haunts her, because now she is the one left in reflection. And what she remembers is not your softness, your empathy, your endless emotional labor. It's your absence. Plato said that the highest form of love is not physical or emotional. It's contemplative. It's the love that causes a soul to confront itself, to seek higher, to awaken. And make no mistake, your silence is an awakening, not just for her, but for you. Because every time you withhold your energy from a woman who disrespects you, every time you walk away from someone who treats your empathy like a leash, you evolve. You stop being the man who needs love to feel valuable and become the man who is valuable, whether loved or not. That's when she feels it, the shift, the recoil. She may never say it. She may never come back. But something in her will forever respect the man who had the courage to leave not out of hate, but from clarity. Because a man who can walk away is a man who is finally standing above the pedestal. And for the first time, she might actually look up in the final pages of the symposium. Plato describes something few men today understand, let alone live. He says the ultimate form of love is not found in the body, not in romance, not even in emotional connection, but in the pursuit of something untouchable, the form of beauty itself. And that's where most modern men fail, because they never ascend. They get stuck worshiping the reflection. They fall in love with a woman's face, her softness, her story, and they confuse attachment for ascension. But Plato's highest teaching was this: true love does not cling. It contemplates. It sees beauty and moves beyond it. It doesn't devour. It observes. It reveres, but never begs. The most powerful man in a woman's life is not the one who gives her everything. It's the one who could, but doesn't. Not out of malice, not out of coldness, but because he understands real love begins with self-possession. The man who becomes untouchable is not emotionless. He's not a narcissist or an avoidant. He's anchored. He feels deeply, but doesn't leak. He gives, but never empties. He's open, but never collapses. And that man he doesn't chase because he has nothing to prove. His presence is the proof. Plato would say that this man has seen the shadow play on the walls of the cave and walked out into the light. He no longer confuses women's attention for truth. He no longer chases the high of being needed. He stands in clarity, and that's what makes him powerful. This is the kind of man a woman doesn't forget, not because he gave her butterflies, but because he gave her standards. He's the man who doesn't argue with her chaos. He just won't enter it. He doesn't beg to be understood. He lets his stillness speak. He doesn't need her admiration, which is why she gives it. Here's what no one tells you. The moment you stop trying to win her love, you start to embody what love actually is. Structure, clarity, power. And when a woman feels that, when she realizes you aren't trying to impress, convince, or validate, she doesn't pull away. She leans in, not because you chased her, but because you walked your path, regardless of where she stood. That's Plato's real message. The highest form of love is not obsession. It's not sacrifice. It's not romantic pursuit. It's transcendence. And when you stop lowering yourself to be loved, when you stop morphing into the man she might like, when you stop placing her above you, you don't just gain her respect, you gain yourself. And in that moment, she can't touch you. Not because you're distant, but because you've become what Plato revered most. A man devoted not to her, but to the truth. There comes a moment in every man's life when he stops asking, "Why didn't she choose me?" and starts asking, "Why did I keep choosing to abandon myself for her?" That's where transformation begins. Not in rage, not in revenge, but in stillness. In the quiet realization that you were never unloved. You were simply unseen because you were never showing up as you. You were showing up as a mirror, as a helper, as a sponge for her storms. You gave her devotion, hoping it would become respect. But what she needed was a man who could stand without her validation. Plato warned us, what is honored is cultivated. What is cultivated becomes worshipped, and what is worshipped is never held. You didn't lose her because you weren't enough. You lost her because you made her everything. But now you know, now you stop chasing connection and start cultivating presence. You stop bleeding your soul to be loved and start building a life so whole that love becomes magnetized to your clarity. Because here's the paradox. The woman who once overlooked you will one day sit in silence wondering why you no longer need her to see you. And it will haunt her, not because you played games, not because you became cold, but because you finally became complete. She won't remember the man who gave her everything. She'll remember the man who walked away with his soul intact. That's the quiet power. That's the echo. That's the Plato-level love. The kind that never begs, because it already is. If this message hit home, send it to another brother who needs to hear it like the video. Subscribe to the channel and support the mission using the link in the description. Together, we're building a generation of men who feel deeply, but bow to no one.